Hello and welcome back to the Romantasy Readers podcast. You've got Allie and I am joined by Nicole as always. And we are super excited today because we're diving into our Bryce and Azriel mates theory deep dive
Part
part
2.
2.
The next chapter.
The next chapter. If you guys thought we were unhinged in the first episode, you just wait. It's
Yep,
gonna
we've
get
got
even.
more coming your way.
We've got more coming. I'm really excited for this week because this episode we're doing a little bit different. Normally we kind of both research things and bring stuff to the podcast, but this is like the Nicole show today. Nicole knows everything.
Oh,
She has done some deep dive research. I'm really setting you up here as an expert.
just apologize in advance. I don't feel like this is my strength area. I'm such more of just an overview kind of vibes person.
Yeah.
But this is obviously my theory. I've got to bring it. I've got to do my research. That is not my strength. This is normally Allie's strength, but I'm changing it up today. I'm gonna make it work. I want to give this to you guys. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. This is the next level of the theory and looking more into the things that influence Sarah J Maas in her writing, into the creation of these books, and how those things may be impacting, and the little points to suggest that they are big parts of the current books and the books to come. So it's really exciting.
And I'm just here for the vibes today.
Oh, you lucky thing. I like being the vibes person.
Yeah. Well, we forgot the last time we were so excited to talk about Azriel that we forgot to do our normal kind of what have you been reading this week. So
Well,
Nicole, what have you been reading?
It went for an hour and 40 minutes. We really didn't have time for it last week,
No.
but luckily I have time for it this week. I am so excited that I've had a chance to read something I really wanted to read. I read Butcher and Blackbird, which was so good. It was so good. It wasn't the typical romantasy that I normally do. This was dark romance. Very dark, very, but funny as well. It was so good because it was like Allie Hazelwood, but then crossed with dark romance, serial killers. It was just this interesting concoction that I'd never experienced before, and it was fabulous. It was so much fun. The best thing I can say is it was so much fun. I've been slightly traumatized by one or two things. I may not be able to look at ice cream the same way again, but it was such a fun read. It was such a fun read. If you are into, firstly, if you're into Allie Hazelwood, you'll love it. If you're into dark romance, you'll love it. Great MMC. Love the serial killer aspect, and that kind of the summary is just that you've got two main characters that kind of like to kill bad guys, a bit Dexter style. Like they like to kill serial killers, so they're serial killers that kill serial killers, and then that's kind of how they meet and how they vibe. But it's just it's a lot. It's just a really fun read, not too complex. Loved it.
I'm really excited. I've added it to my list. I'm hoping to get to it soon. I'm perpetually behind in reading, but at least lately. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My books, it's just my bookstagram, it just took off, and now I have all these free arcs that I have to read. I just can't, it's just so hard having such a popular bookstagram. But no, I'm mostly kidding, but I have a lot to read. But I read something that I was really excited about. I did get a free copy of it, but I was still excited for it, and it was something I was excited and choosing to read. Yeah, I haven't paid for a book since November. It's great.
Don't rub it in. I'm just so excited. I got delivered my very first book, my very first free book. And because I'm in Australia, I always feel really guilty. I'm always just like, oh, do you want to ship it to Australia? Maybe that's a really long way. They're like, no, we'll ship it to you. And I'm like, free book. I'm not at the point yet where it's like Sarah J Maas or someone amazing, but one step at a time, guys. One step at a time.
Yeah. So this book that I just finished, it's called Kingdom of Claw. It's the second book in a series that I've talked about before. So it's this Icelandic Vikings inspired kind of world. Demi Winters is the author, and we're going to interview her. So we just confirmed that this week. We don't know when it will we'll publish it or anything, but we are going to interview her. So you'll get to hear a little bit more about these books. So I'm not going to talk too much about it now because save it for the interview, but I really good. Like, go listen to that interview because they're really, really
Mm.
great books. I loved this, like, second book, Kingdom of Claw. In fact, I rated it 4 stars, but I would say that the end is like a 5-star book. Like, it's
Wow, that's
really,
so
really good at the end.
cool.
There's a
It's
lot
such
going
good
on, and I loved it.
timing for me, because I'll jump into this next, and because Danielle Jensen has just come out with her sort of Viking romance,
Yeah.
romantic novel. I'm super excited. I'm waiting for that to be delivered. I ordered it from America because I wanted the nice shiny silver edges, so I'm probably gonna have to
Yep.
wait extra long for that to arrive, but this is gonna tie in really nicely. I'm gonna have my little Viking era that's about to begin, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna go, like, into the Viking romantasy world. I love it. I'm so
I know.
excited.
I had, like obviously, I had, like, a King Arthur era. Like, I read, like, 3 different books series that were,
As
like,
you
King
do.
Arthur and Fae, and now I'm, like, in my Viking area,
I
so I
love
love
it.
it.
I love it. So good.
Alright. So, anyway, that's what we're reading.
Mhm.
Nicole, are you excited to dive into some of these theories today?
I am. I am very excited. I hope I can just deliver everything. I feel like when I am overwhelmed with information, I'm just like, I've got so much information to deliver, and I'm either just gonna like word vomit and just give it all out at the wrong moment, and then you're gonna be like, okay, none of that registered, and now you're just weird, Nicole. Or hopefully I actually do it justice and I get this out and it makes sense and it helps some of these theories click for you, or at least gives you really interesting information and diving into Sarah J Maas and her brain and her personality
Mhm.
and what drives her as a writer and what drives her in creating these characters and what her future books look like. So
Yeah.
happy just to jump on into it. I'm going to swim like mad and hopefully give you guys some great content.
Yeah. So, I think we're gonna start with Sailor Moon, and I'm
Mhm.
super excited because I knew that Sarah J Maas loved Sailor Moon. I kinda knew that about her, but I've never really d di dived into Sailor Moon
No,
myself. I
no.
don't know anything about Sailor Moon. Like, I am so excited for you to just tell me about Sailor Moon and how it connects to SJM, and I'm I'm hoping that I get convinced to watch it. I'm kind of already convinced, but, like, I, like, pitched it to my husband the other day. I was like, would you watch this with me?" He's like, "Yeah, that sounds fun. Like, let's do it."
I know. Well,
Um
even just from like the 90s perspective, it's just a really nice, great 90s throwback. I actually don't know how I never got onto it in the first place
Same.
because I think I never realized it had a romance aspect. I think I always just kind of thought,
Right.
I mean, I think
I just
I
thought it
was
was,
a
like,
kid in the
anime.
I was a kid of the 90s, right? I was into like Power Rangers and Captain Planet and I don't know, I was just busy with
Same.
other things. I didn't stumble upon Sailor Moon, but now I'm watching it and I'm like, I would have loved this when I was a kid. This would have been so good, but I missed it. Anyway, so the background to this is, as I spoke about in last week's episode, I connected with some absolute, seriously professional Bryce Reel fans. And they came at me with all these different theories and stuff, things that I had never considered before, and a lot of evidence. Now, one of those things, one of the biggest things that they justify as to why Bryce Reel is going to happen is because of Sailor Moon. Now, the background to this is that Sarah J. Maas herself was a huge fan of Sailor Moon growing up, and
Mhm.
she had her Pinterest. Her Pinterest, which is of like Crescent City, Twilight of the Gods, she obviously had one for Akatar and Throne of Glass as well, full of Sailor Moon, particularly Twilight of the Gods, was just full of Sailor Moon images, phrases, all that sort of thing. But until about a few weeks ago, I had no knowledge of Sailor Moon whatsoever, apart from some show in the 90s. Like, I kind of knew like the manga kind of images, but I knew nothing about the characters. I knew nothing about the fact that it's actually a whole love story. It's a whole intergalactic love story. And I don't know how I didn't get onto it in the first place. But now that I'm here, I'm super excited. So, what is the story about? So, basically, it's about the main girl is Serena or Usagi. This is a Japanese manga that has been changed into English. And I think all 4 of the first seasons are all dubbed in English, whereas the final season is only in Japanese. But this is basically about an ordinary girl living in Tokyo. She's about 14 years old to start with. This is obviously
Okay.
aimed more at children and teenagers. And she finds out that she is Sailor Moon and she has these powers, that she's sort of special, and then she's learning these powers. She meets this guy, Darian. Who, when they first meet, they hate each other. And he calls her Meatball Head because she's got the 2 little round things that sit on her head with her pigtails, and they totally fight initially, but over time that relationship changes. So she then obviously is exploring her power. Along the way, she collects the other sailors, which is there is Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. A huge part of this story is not just about the love story, but it's also about the friendships and the girl power. This is a lot of girl power fighting demons. The song is the best, right? The song, I'm obsessed with this song. Like, fighting evil by moonlight. Like, it's so catchy. And every time I'm listening to it, I'm just like, yes, yes, we're going to fight. Like, it's just, I don't know, go watch it, guys. I'm a bit excited at the moment. I'm right in the middle of my Sailor Moon era. I'm in the second season at the moment, and it's just like now it's just getting really good. It's getting really good now. So that is where I'm up to. So anyway, so she's collected her other sailors, and she later on finds out that she is actually the Moonlight Princess, that she has been reincarnated. She used to be Princess Serena, I think Princess Serena, and she has basically been reincarnated because there was a massive war, and the queen at the time had to send them all away, take away their memories, and have them basically reincarnated again. And they've all come back again, but they can't remember any of that. And they're only kind of going to get their powers back if this evil megaverse, sort of the villains, come back, which in this sort of series, they have come back. So the main villains are Queen Beryl and Queen Metalia, and they're sort of the overarching sort of villains. It's a very typical 90s show where you have like every week you've got a villain that they have to defeat, and they, pull out their powers, and she transforms into Sailor Moon, and then she defeats them. And then there's a lot of filler episodes, but then there's also a lot of this, core that slowly
Building
gets
the
built up over time. But
Okay.
okay.
I feel like just already, like, maybe you were gonna get to this, but, like, I'm just gonna, like, react because again, like, guys,
Go
I
for
know
it.
literally, I am learning about Sailor Moon for the first time right now. Here's what I'm hearing. Number 1, she's, like, in Tokyo, which is a very, like, urban, kind of,
Metropolitan
like,
city.
modern city, similar to, like, Crescent City. Like, Crescent City is sort of described as this, like, urban, modern city. She has these, like, powers, and she's, like,
Starlight powers
reincarnated. Oh,
to
she has
be
starlight powers. You didn't even say
starlight
that yet. She has
powers. Yeah, sorry.
starlight powers.
Probably an important aspect there. Oh, yeah,
Probably
she
an
has
important
starlight
aspect.
powers.
Okay, so she has starlight powers,
Mhm.
and she's, like, this reincarnation of the starlight power. That's Bryce, obviously.
Mhm.
Um,
Queen yeah. Queen
and that
Serenity.
there's, like,
Queen
these sort of,
Serenity
like,
is who she's been, reincarnated from.
who's been reincarnated as a former person, a former queen. That's
Mhm.
Bryce. And then I like that, like, there are these villains who are very old and kind of have driven this, like, reincarnation, and that the villains have kind of been
Mm.
around for centuries. That also feels very
Yes.
Crescent City to
And
me.
I guess an interesting aspect. Now, look, there's heaps of different Sailor Moons. There's like Sailor Moon Crystal. There's like there's so much to go into, and some of them talk about slightly different stories. But Queen Beryl actually, and I don't want to give too much away in case you want to watch it, but basically had a connection with the previous reincarnation of Prince Darien and and Princess Serenity. Oh my god, I'm gonna have so much trouble trying to remember all these names because they've each got like 4 names each, so it's very hard to
Yeah.
keep up with it all. But she had a connection to them in the prior life, and then is now like the villain. So it's really interesting, and even possibly, I mean, some of the deeper theories. Could some of our current characters turn into these villains? Which is another
Yeah.
very interesting
Right.
aspect.
That's like a whole 'nother avenue to explore. Okay. All right. Keep going. I interrupted you, but I was like, I am
No,
just,
no,
like,
no, definitely
reeling.
jump
Yeah.
in. Exactly, and then I'm, like, already like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, it's starlight power." Like, that's kinda one of the huge connections as to why we think that Serena is very similar to Bryce. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're in main Tokyo, sort of surrounds. She's realized that she has these, starlight powers, and she's fighting the Megaverse, which is kind of the overarching sort of villains. Now, the big thing about her is she doesn't want to be the Starborn Princess. When she finds out that she is the Starborn Princess, she doesn't want to be. She just wants to be a normal girl. And a lot
Sounds
of
like
her
Bryce.
sort of not like anyone else that we know. She keeps just wanting to kind of just go back to that. And they also go through these journeys where she keeps like remembering and then losing their memories and getting them back. Then, of course, the other one is Darian. So Darian is the main love interest for Serena, but he's also known as Tuxedo Mask. Tuxedo Mask kind of comes in. Okay, the weird thing is his powers are like throwing roses, which I don't know. That's just that. I don't know what kind of power that is. That's a bit weird. But I think like obviously Sarah J Maas went, yeah, we're going to make a better power than that. Let's get some Shadow Daddy powers and just, we're
Yeah,
not doing
right,
roses.
right.
But all right, so Serena is really like, she's quite young. The personality is a little bit different, but she's very just kind of scatterbrained, lovable, funny, silly, energetic. She's obsessed with food. She's a leader. She doesn't really want to be one, but you would kind of say she's almost a little bit light, frivolous, scatterbrained until she becomes Sailor Moon. Then she kind of turns on her serious. She pulls off her serious
Mhm.
tops and she's like, right, now I'm being a superhero, and she actually steps into what she wants to be. Darian and Tuxedo Mask are the opposite of this. He's tall, dark, serious, very unimpressed with Serena when he first meets her. Calls her
Mm,
meatball head. He's very kind of calm, calculating. He's older, and they initially really don't like each other, but over time they start to warm up and start to fall in love with each other, and eventually realize that they are both reincarnated from Prince Edaminion and Queen Serenity. So Prince Edaminion is the Prince of Earth, the people of Earth. He is their prince, and she is the Princess Queen Serenity of the Moon. And they kind of fall in love. They sort of weren't meant to fall in love, but they do. And then there ends up being this war and the megaverse, and then they have to sort of escape and lose all their memories. And they keep it's a very tragic love story where they keep dying and they end up not being together, very Romeo and Juliet, but they keep being brought back together. This intergalactic love story across universes, when the love just can't be denied. It just keeps coming back together, and they eventually, I haven't watched the end of it yet, but from what I've been told, obviously it ends up that they realize who they are and they realize that they're meant to be together and that their, souls are sort of mated, so to speak. So
okay. So could
what
be similarities to, like, the Thea Adis potentially history repeating itself situation. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, yeah. So what is your take on it, just on a first kind of
I
impressions?
mean, yeah, like, honestly, it does it the whole like, it if she didn't have starborn power or, like, starlight power, I would be like, "Oh, is this connected?" But the fact that she has starlight power, is this reluctant leader, is it's set in this, like, modern kind of, like, city space, and she's of the moon, which kinda means she's, like, from, like, a different planet or something, like, these connections between Crescent City and Sailor Moon seem really strong to me.
Mhm.
Um, so, like, that's kind of, like, the first thing you have to establish is, like, okay, can we draw insight on Crescent City from the Sailor Moon world? And it seems like we can. And so
Yes.
then when we think about how does Tuxedo Mask potentially relate to Azriel, it makes a lot of sense, like, there are these intergalactic lovers, they've found each other across worlds, it sounds like multiple times.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's the biggest, like, if people say, oh, well, could Tuxedo Mask be Hunt? I think the biggest thing, so I posed this question back to people. I sort of said, well, how do we know that why would it be Az? Why is it not someone
yeah,
else? I said it's the intergalactic love story that really suggests that they come from two different planets and they keep being pulled back together, which obviously Hunt,
mm,
they're part of the same planet. With as they are being pulled from different planets, and obviously that pivotal moment in House of Sky and Breath where Bryce is pulled to Az's feet, yanked
yeah,
across galaxies, would really tie in to it being very inspired by Sailor Moon. And remembering too that we're picking this up from a lot of what has been on Sarah J Maas's Pinterest, that she had it covered in Sailor
that's
Moon.
right, right.
So many, and it is actually a beautiful love story. Like, for something that is written for kids and young and teenagers, like, I'm getting so much out of this. I'm watching this, and with all the theories I've had going on, I've just been going, oh my God, like, there's so much in this, even to the point that the first couple of episodes, there's like people are wearing rings that are actually controlling them. And I'm just like, oh, that's not relevant to like Throne of Glass, is it?
Of
Like,
all.
these people are wearing rings and suddenly they're controlled by the megaverse. And then there's another one where they like all go into black holes. And I'm like, oh, that's not relevant to what we just saw in Crescent City 3. Like, oh, they just went into black
Right.
holes. I mean, it's just in one little episode, but I can see how Sarah J Maas has obviously seen these little parts of Sailor Moon and gone, hey, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to expand on it and turn it into a whole big part of my story. So,
Right.
mm,
And right, I do remember the Pinterest board, like, there were Sailor Moon references both in the Crescent City board, but also in the Twilight of the Gods board, which we kinda think is gonna be the, like, crossover series. So, right, like, Sarah SJM herself has kind of told us that she's at the very least inspired by Sailor Moon for these books.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's
And I
good.
think this is a
That's
really good point to actually jump into. I shared maybe a couple of weeks ago about the Sarah J Maas's Pinterest and some of the images that have been on there. And what this shows, obviously it shows a lot of Sailor Moon. It shows a mask, very similar to the one that Nesta kind of wears. There's a lot of images that look similar to Valkyrie. Then there's sort of some demons and I'm going to say princes of hell, but potentially some villains, sort of monster sort of looking things. And then there's a Native American image of sort of a red woman and a blue sort of man, like their light sort of emanating around them, which I'm going to point out is close to my Stonemother theory that I'll talk about a bit later. And
But
then
also,
there is
like, Bryce has red hair and Azriel has blue light. Like, that
yeah,
right
yeah,
there is like, what?
that little thing. And then there's all the images of Sailor Moon, particularly the love story at the end between the what princess Princess Serenity and Prince Edaminion, and kind of that love story and kind of suggesting that's kind of where this is going to end up. But I if this is Sarah J Maas's master plan, I'm just blown away because I never would have imagined in a million years that she would take Crescent City and Akatar World, merge the two together, and then full on Marvel style create then a whole nother set of books that are going to bring some of these characters all together to fight potentially like a megaverse, like whatever this
Yeah,
evil realm is beyond this. So it's pretty like if it happens, it is so exciting. And I think we're just gonna have I honestly think it will be her biggest piece of work. It'll be huge. It'll be like her
huge,
Game of
yeah.
Thrones for, everything.
And I just can't wait for it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So some
Alright.
other interesting aspects of Darian and Serena is I think especially their personalities and how they change each other along the way and they make each other better. Like, as I said, Serena's a little bit scatterbrained initially, but Darian with his calmness, he's more serious. He calms her down. She gets better around him. And then she gets him more out of his shell. He becomes more caring, more thoughtful. They both get better around each other as you see that love sort of grow. Another thing that's really interesting that I've just been noticing watching season 2, which is kind of where their love is starting to blossom, even sometimes sort of against their will, like they don't realize it's going on, but it is. They start just randomly hand holding, right? They'll just in a moment they'll just be holding hands, like they'll just grab. Oh
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Oh
I'm
my
just like,
god.
oh my god, hand holding. Like she'd be like, take my hand, and then we take your hands, like, oh, hand holding. Like that's how their romance started. And the other thing she does is she tends to rest her head on his shoulder because he's so much taller and bigger and stronger than her. And then she just kind of rests her head on his shoulder. It's this really cute romance. And that's why I'm actually really enjoying it because I'm like, I am here for a romance. And I had no idea that
Yeah.
Sailor Moon was so romance heavy. I'm like, hello, I'm here for this. This is the best. So that's kind of some of the bigger sort of suggestions about why there's some similarities here. Obviously, you've got the reincarnation of the Starborn Moon Princess and the Prince of Earth, this intergalactic love. It definitely points to some similarities to what we can see in the current Crescent City, the current characters, and what we could potentially see moving into the next Akatar book. And then, if our theories are correct, moving into Twilight of the Gods beyond that.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I guess like even for those maybe for listeners who are listening and are not like not really vibing or feeling the Bryce and Azriel mate theory, but maybe do agree that there's like something else out there for Bryce. There could, right, like at the connections between Sailor Moon and Bryce are very clear to me. Like just like the fact that her power is starlight, like that, you know, and she's like the reincarnated power of this other person. Like at the very least, it sounds like if SJM is going to keep, you know, some kind of similarities here, that would point to some sort of like intergalactic love for Bryce.
Mhm.
That may be Azrael, that may be somebody else, but like there's some kind of intergalactic love coming for Bryce. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, why have all the like tuxedo mask stuff, right? Like it'd be one thing if she just had like the Sailor Moon stuff on her Pinterest board, but she had all the tuxedo mask stuff on her Pinterest board,
Yes.
right? Like talking about this like intergalactic love. And I remember there were a lot of quotes that I've seen,
Mhm.
you know, from Sailor Moon about their like kind of like finding each other across stars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
um
yes.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's a really interesting discussion about the reincarnation of Thea and Adis. Now, I did pose this question back, though, to the people that I got this from to ask about. I guess my big question was Adis, because I don't like having holes in my theories, right? I want them to be
Yeah.
solid. I want to feel like I have every avenue of it answered, because otherwise, for me, it's still like you can't be solid on it. And my question was, okay, how are they reincarnated when Adis is potentially still alive in hell? Like, he's not dead. So if they're reincarnated, shouldn't they be both
Yeah.
dead? Like
Yeah.
that seemed like a big obvious crack, like gap to me. Now so it had created a really good discussion. The first thing was to say was that Thea is definitely dead, so that connection is broken. So perhaps what the reincarnation is a reincarnation of that connection that the two characters have to each other,
Yes.
particularly obviously Thea being reincarnated. The other thing someone suggested was, do we actually know that Adis is even alive? We don't know how death works in hell, and we don't actually have any definites that he is alive or dead. So there is possibly a suggestion that he might not actually be alive. Don't know how solid I am on that one, but that's certainly some of the discussions that have been around that kind of reincarnation theory and why, I guess, what might sort of suggest that they are reincarnated, but also maybe still a little gap. I think that's still something for me that I would like to be more solid on, is that if they are reincarnated, how do we confirm like how Adis is part of that? How, like, you know, where does Az come into this? Where does Adis come into this? And are they kind of
Yeah.
linked or are they completely different?
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I could easily see, I mean, you know, I obviously think that Azrael is like connected to hell somehow. That's sort of, I don't have like a ton of theory. Like I don't have a lot backing it. That's just like my suspicion, I guess, is that I think he's connected to hell. And so if he is connected to hell, it could just be it's like a reincarnation of the mating bond, right?
Yeah.
Like the mating bond across, you know, a starlight and a shadow or hell power or something like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And that would be really interesting to me.
Yes.
So
There's actually a really interesting other theory which has just been discussed recently, which is the cover of House and Sky and Breath, right? Now, I don't know if any of you guys have thought the same thing, but I always thought the guy on the front cover looked really weird. I was like, he looks
oh
like,
yeah.
like the girls, like these, they're beautiful. Like they're stunning. The two, the Crescent City and this one, they look gorgeous. But the guy one, I was always just like, man, they could have done better on that photo. Like it's just a bit off. Anyway, then someone said that they believe that it is a half-half image, that it's half as, half hunt, showing how similar they are.
Ooh.
Now, if you look at this image closely, you will see that one has a human ear and one has a fey ear. One's more pointed and the other is rounded. And if you look at the
Wow.
faces really closely, they are slightly different. So there's obviously theory that the fey side, the as side, has the more pointed ear and is like similar, and then you've got the hunt side, and I think one has a hazel eye and the other just has a brown eye, obviously pointing to this whole hunt being kind of recreated by hell to be of the image of her mate. But
Potentially. It could, I
it
mean, it could also be Rune and Hunt. Like, you know, just to
could
play
be.
devil's advocate here,
Mhm,
right? But
mhm,
I think there's certainly like that could be there because book 2 is really where we explore their kind of like mating connection. We don't really
mhm.
explore that in book 1 or book 3. So, you know, they're certainly is potential for that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, go have a look at your book and tell me what you think. But I certainly think looking closely at it, there are very much two images. You can see sort of one on one side,
Yeah.
one on the other. And that is why the image looks a little weird. You kind of look at it and you're just like, why does that guy look a little
Something
bit,
doesn't feel right,
yeah,
but it's 'cause it's
NQR, not quite
asymmetrically your
right.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think you could have gone a better looking guy. Like it just didn't quite gel. And if you ask
Yeah.
me, the as face guy is slightly better. Well, at least that's what I'm
Mm.
going with right now. That's what I'm happy with. Some other just little pieces that were just sort of outlined, just some more things that are connections and similar to Sailor Moon and the Crescent City and Bryce is just the Crescent Moons themselves. Me wearing my Crescent Moon earrings right now,
Yeah.
but like literally as soon as I started watching it, I'm like, how did I not think these two things were related? Like everything is crescent moons throughout Sailor Moon, and then the whole three books are about crescent moon, and then the starlight powers. So there's huge
Right.
connections there, to how they're sort of connected. Definitely to how Bryce is definitely being influenced
Definitely connected.
by.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's yeah. Sorry, go.
I was gonna say, I feel like we need to get like a Sailor Moon expert on the show, on the
I
podcast. Somebody who's
know.
like watched all of it and could
Yes,
give us even more of like those tiny details on the tuxedo mask side.
I
But
I'm
yeah,
so desperate. We're trying to talk them into it, but we really want to bring our subject matter experts along to this podcast. We are trying to talk them into it. We call her the Oracle, which is Sophia. She is the smart, like you'll ask her a question and she'll be like, here's a 5-page thesis on, on the justification of
yeah,
this.
Sophia's great.
Amazing. She has so much knowledge and she knows Sailor Moon inside out, back to front. But English is not her first language. So she's like, oh, I don't know how I'd feel about, coming on and speaking English. But we have some other girls. We've got them from everywhere. We've got them from Australia, Texas. I don't know, they're all over the place. I would love to bring a panel along of about 5 people and just let them
Yes.
at it. Let them at it to just talk about all these theories because their brains are amazing.
And if you're a listener and you're a Sailor Moon expert, email us or DM us. It's actually really easy to email us. It's just like romanticyreaders@gmail.com. You can also DM us on Instagram. Like if you're a Sailor Moon expert and you're like, oh my God, you guys have opened my eyes and now you're thinking of like all these different things, like please let us know. We're super excited about this.
Exactly.
Because it's gonna take us both a little bit of time to get through the whole show. So
Exactly,
tell
exactly. And
us
look, a lot of
everything.
this information for me, obviously, I'm kind of in the second season now, but a lot of it has been given to me by other experts. So, well,
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
super thankful to those people, everyone in our Bryce Reel channel that chats to us. Thank you so much. These girls are amazing. They literally have helped us bring a lot of this here today. But they are amazing, and the effort they've gone to, how passionate they are about this, and how much they really want to give a solid theory here. They're not just trying to be like, oh, I just love the vibes. I love the sound of Bryce and Az being together and like, let's just make it happen. They're like, here's all the evidence and we're continuing to search for it. It's all really well thought out. And they're just a really lovely bunch of human beings. Like they're so lovely. They're just the nicest people. So it's been really fun to connect with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to jump into now. I think, is there anything else you want to cover? Have you got any additional questions about Sailor Moon before we jump
No,
into
I think that's it. I mean, I just am, like, honestly really excited to watch it now, and, like, connect
Oh,
it to
I
Crescent
yes,
City. I can't wait. I
great
can't wait.
great thing is with Sailor Moon, right, is because unfortunately, particularly for the 90s version, there's a lot of filler episodes. There's episodes where nothing really happens for the core story. But if you Google, like, which ones are filler episodes, you can actually get a list of what the filler episodes are that won't give you any information. So you can just skip those episodes and
And just
just
watch the
stick.
the big stuff. Yeah. But then
Exactly.
you miss out on, like, the tiny little
I
romance,
know,
little
that's the only thing. There's
highlight.
probably a couple of moments where you're like, "Oh, okay, all of a sudden these 2 are now a bit more connected or something," and you maybe missed a little bit. Like, ideally, you should, but it's like 200 episodes. They're only like 20 minutes long,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
200 episodes is a lot. I'm not that patient. I'm like, "No, no, no,
I
let."
I love to watch TV like that when I'm, like, folding laundry in my bedroom,
Mhm,
Like, I'm putting
mhm.
clothes away, folding laundry, I put something like that on, like, it's okay if I step into my closet for a minute to put something away and then come walk back out, so I will definitely add that to my laundry
To be watched
laundry
pile.
laundry
Not
show.
to be read, to be watched pile.
To be watched pile while I'm dealing with my laundry piles.
Exactly.
Um,
Nothing look, at least it's a great love story. For any romance, I mean, we love romance. We love
I
romances. And
I
romance
love
is a bit
a romance.
innocent, but it's super sweet. I love it.
Listen, I read Gone with the Wind and when I was in the 6th grade and then Pride and Prejudice when I was in the 7th grade. Like, I have always
All
loved
for romance.
romance.
I
I've
know.
always been into
Me
it.
too. Me too. Okay. So next phase
This one
is
I'm so excited about. This one I know about and this is great.
the Stonemother mythology. I thought
Yes.
this was good to go into next because there's a few pieces I can bring back from Sailor Moon. Okay, so I have spoken about this already a little bit on my Instagram because when I got this piece of information, this really blew my mind. I was just so I think I've told the backstory, but I'm happy to tell it again. So obviously read the bonus chapter in House of Flame and Shadow, and Bryce is like picking a song, and she just ends up going with her gut, and she picks the song Stone Mother. Now, I, being the typical curious person that I am, was like, is this a real song? So of course I've
I
gone
did
and
the same
Googled
thing.
it. Yeah. And no, it's not. It's not a real
Not a
song. It's a made up song, right? So I've gone to these girls that I speak to and I'm like, oh my God, did anyone else do the same thing as me? Did you Google to see if this is a song? Anyway, Sophia came back and she said, no, but there is this petrification myth. And here is a link to it. Oh my God. Oh my God, was
Yeah.
my mind blown.
Yeah.
So, Stone Mother mythology. So, the petrification myth, the legend of the Great Stone Mother of Patis, which is a Native American legend. So, basically, there's a whole legend of Native American legend about the Great Stone Mother. And this is basically the summary of how it goes. So basically, there is a man that is known as the father of the people of Earth, and he lives alone under the mountain for a very long time. He is very lonely and he longs for company. There was a woman who heard about man, and she was very curious and wanted to see the man, but she is married to Bear. Now, when Bear finds out, he gets extremely jealous and he gets aggressive with the woman and they end up fighting and she is forced to club him to death. After this, she runs away and then she eventually finds herself at a lake at Stillwater, which is actually quite close to Man's Mountain. They eventually find each other and they slowly fall in love. Now, that's basically the basic summary of the story. It's not a like super complex story, but
No, but let me give like a little more context here too. So it's just because, the place that this is based off of is like 5 hours from my house. So
yes,
uh
that's what I looked up.
there is this beautiful lake and unfortunately it's such a bummer. It's shut down because
Aw.
people were it's on tribal land, Native American land, and people were like going and like graffitiing it and not taking care of it. And it's like
Aw.
a really, yeah. So like you can't access it now. You can't hike to it. It used to be a hike, but it's not anymore. But in the middle of this lake is this big kind of like island, right? A big mountain, and there's these like things around it that kind of look like a bear and a man and a woman, and so it's the story to kind of explain what that mountain in the middle of this lake is. And the mountain itself is called Stone Mountain. You can Google it, you can look up pictures. It's very cool. It's only, like I said, like 5 hours from my house. If I could hike it, I would. But so it is this just like
It's a real place.
it's a real place. Yeah. And it's called
And
Stone Mountain. And if you Google Stone Mountain, that's like the first thing that's going to come up. So I think it's really
yeah,
interesting that SJM titled the song Stone Mountain and that Maz is
exactly.
singing that
Do we
song.
think that Sarah J Maas used the name Stone Mother multiple times throughout like throughout that bonus chapter? She uses the phrase Stone Mother. Do you think she did that by accident, or do you think
No,
she
I
did
do
it
not.
in relevance to a love story, a Native American love story
Love
about
story.
a lonely man that lives under a mountain with a woman that has to kill her husband, aka Orion theory, and they end up finding love together at the end of it. I
Yeah.
do not
And
think it is by chance.
I don't either. And I realized like as I was talking and describing like the mountain, I was calling it Stone Mountain, but it's not. It's Stone Mother. I want to make sure that that's clear. It is actually called Stone Mother. It's not called Stone
Yeah.
Mountain. It is a
Well,
mountain. It's Stonemother. Because like the name is exactly the same. I think it's important to like point that out.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and I think obviously just to summarize for people, like the theory is that the man is Az. We know Az is extremely lonely. He's the only person that hasn't found love after 520 years. He's the last one standing, and he is very, very lonely and sad at this point. We've got the mountain, which we would say is definitely Ramiel. Ramiel is our mountain. I mean, we've got a few mountains to choose from, but that is definitely the most pivotal one, particularly to Az. And I'd be actually really curious to find out where Rose Hall is, right? Because Rose Hall is Az's house, right? I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
we
I
don't.
think
I don't. I
so.
would love to know where that exact location is in Prithian, because if that is at the base of a mountain, I'm just going to lose my marbles.
Yeah, okay, okay, hold on though. I just realized you're like, "Oh, Tuxedo Mask's powers is like roses." I don't know what
Yes,
you were like, "I don't know what that power is." And now I just like remembered that he's from Rose Hall, like the rose
I'm like
power. Like,
saying it. I'm not even clicking. I'm like, oh, his house is Rose
you
Hall.
guys,
Rose
this is
Hall, tuxedo mask, roses.
rose power. This is exactly if any listener ever wanted to know what Nicole and I's like Instagram because we don't like type, we like voice message each other. I think because it's like so much easier than trying to type everything out. This is what our this is what our Instagram voice messages are like. Is we're just like,
It is.
wait, hold that thought, Nicole. You just said this.
This is how we get to our theories that we bring on here. Like, this
Yeah.
is how we
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
forth until we get it right. But I love it.
Anyway,
I love it.
going back to
Yes.
Stone Mother.
Yes. Rose Hall. Okay. Okay. So, woman is Bryce, obviously, and bear being Hunt, and this whole her having to club him. You've had this whole theory, which you'll probably jump into shortly,
Mhm.
about the
Yep.
Orion theory,
Ryan.
which would very, very much tie into this Stone Mother theory. So all these little pieces, Sailor Moon, Stone Mother, now the Orion
Orion.
theory, it all
Yeah.
links up. It all links
Yeah.
into this same story. Rose Hall. Oh my God. Now I've got another epic, like, light bulb moment.
You have to
All
now
right.
you're gonna have to go like find every reference to, Rose
I
Hall.
just want to
And
know where it's
the thing is
located. Because if it is located at the base of Ramiel, I'm going to lose my mind. But
yeah,
yes, jump
yeah.
into what are you
Well,
thinking?
and so like bear or not bear, sorry, man lives under a mountain. He lives in darkness. He lives in isolation. As whether he was under a mountain or not, like he had to grow up in like darkness. He had to grow up basically in a dungeon,
Yes.
potentially under a mountain. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me, it's like it's clear that
Connection
man is
already.
as, and in some versions of the myth, man actually sees woman first. Like he gets to see her and he thinks she's so beautiful, but then
Mhm.
she goes off with Bear and marries Bear, which like is interesting, right? Because as saw Bryce and then she left him, right? And so
Yeah,
woman goes
stupid
back with
Hunt.
Bear and Bear then is like jealous of man and is kind
Yeah,
of like getting
and
angry and kills him.
when we think about this jealousy, and if anyone's sitting here thinking, "Oh, but, like, there's no way Hunt would ever hurt Bryce." Now, I go to the Celestina chapter,
We've
and
talked about it,
when
but
he
yeah.
yeah, we've spoken about it before, but he loses a lot of control in that episode in that chapter, and then he actually takes her hand as he's kinda still got his lightning going, and he pulls it back in, and he says, "Oh, I would never hurt Bryce." And I'm just always like, "Ooh, never say never." Like,
Yeah.
when you say never,
Well,
I
and
instantly feel like, "Don't say it."
to me, what we get from that scene is like an indication that Hunt may not be fully in control of his power.
Exactly.
Like that he may not be fully in control of it. And so there may be something that happens, whether it's him intentionally or the Princess of Hell potentially controlling him, and he goes and he maybe hurts Bryce or something
Mhm.
or threatens her. And so she either has to kill him or do something, and then find her respite with Azriel, which is what I think we all love the idea of. But
Yeah.
this all connects to Orion mythology and
Yeah.
Orion connections as well. So like in there's a lot of different versions of Orion, right? Because it's mythology, that's how this goes.
Mhm.
um I think what's something that's very interesting is, you know SJM could have named him anything. She could have just left it at Hunt. She didn't have to give him the
Nope.
Orion name.
Nope.
She did that. She gave him the Orion name. Um, And, you know, we don't get a ton of similarities other than that, like, he's a hunter, right? Like, oh, he hunts demons. He was bred to hunt demons. Orion is a hunter.
Mhm.
That's kind of what he's known for. That's why he has the arrow or the bow and arrows in like the constellation. Um, but you know, SJM could have just left it at that, right? She could have
Mhm.
just been like, "Oh, I just wanted to kind of like loosely tie
Yeah.
in this mythology,
Because, yeah,
right?
she
Like he's
always
a
just
hunter."
loosely ties things in with no future relevance, that's
Right,
for
right.
sure.
Yeah, because that's all what she does. Um, but she actually doubles down, right? Or triples down, whatever you want to call it, in House of Flame and Shadow, because we find out that Hunt has three fathers. He has Apollyon, he has Thanatos, and he has um a fae
Yeah.
or no, a
Mhm.
Malachim named Hyrieus.
Mhm.
And Hyrieus like worked for the Asteri, worked in like the mech suit factory or something like that. Okay. In some versions of the myth of Orion, he also has three fathers: Zeus, Poseidon, and a human named Hyrieus. That is the
Mhm.
name of Hunt's like human
Yep.
father in the
Mhm.
story. So that we like that to me is she is doubling down on like there are connections between Hunt
Mhm.
and
Yep.
Orion. Like
Mhm.
very, very interesting to me. And in like every single every single Orion story, he's killed. He dies. He doesn't make it.
Yeah.
Like, and
Mhm.
I just think that that's really important. But in many stories, he's the bad guy. And
Mhm.
he's sometimes the bad guy for lots of different reasons. Sometimes he unfortunately is has like sexual assault towards like a king's daughter who then blinds him, but more often he attacks his lover Artemis, and then Artemis, his lover, has to kill him
Yep.
because he attacks her. And again, I think this connects back to the Stonemother theory, back to what we're
Yes.
all saying, which is that Hunt is not in control of his power. He may attack Bryce, and then Bryce, his lover, has to kill him, which is pretty much how Orion's story ends over and over again.
Yep.
So, you know, I just don't think that these things are like
Not significant.
unintentional or coincidences, you
No.
know? They
It
the Orion thing doesn't necessarily prove that the Brasriel theory, like that doesn't necessarily prove that Az and Bryce are mates, but it certainly indicates to us that Hunt is not endgame. That
yes.
there is,
Yes.
you know, something's gonna happen. And then when you pair that with the connection between Orion and Stone Mother, it's like, oh, it really sounds like Az.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly. It really puts Bear to sounding extremely similar to Hunt and that same sort of situation that the woman is married to Bear and there ends up being this assault. Now, also remembering that this is quite similar to you know, the Autumn King and Ember, and the Autumn King hitting Ember and that being a deal breaker for their relationship. So we know that for Bryce, that would be a deal breaker. Like, even if Hunt
mhm,
doesn't end up getting killed, just that would kill their relationship. She'd be like, and I'm out of here. Like, if he aggressively attacked her, that would definitely be game over as far as she'd be concerned.
mhm,
Mates or
mhm.
not, she'd be just like, I'm out of here. So,
Yeah.
and truthfully, I really want a twist of the story at this point. I would be happy to see Hunt turn bad at this point.
Yeah.
It just we need
Everything
a
was
shake up.
just like, I was talking to another friend of mine on Instagram, and she was like, "It just felt like everything was so straightforward and wrapped up in a little bow," and that was kind of annoying, and that's why people aren't liking the story. Like,
Mm,
there wasn't enough, like, tension and twists, and I really feel that, you know? There
mhm.
wasn't enough, and I think it's because like, lots is coming, you know? It was almost to, like, trick us, into
Exactly. It
thinking
was
that.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, watch this space. And that's why I've said to a lot of people, if you are a Bryce and Hunt fan, I'd probably exit stage left now and just go, right, this was a great
Mhm.
trilogy. Let's just finish it right here because I feel like things are definitely going to take a turn next book. And I don't think there's going to be a happy ending for Bryce and Hunt. There's at least going to be a lot of challenges for them to work through, if not a whole different shift in our story. So,
Yeah.
I think sorry, I just want to jump into another little connection to Stone Mother and Sailor Moon, which is that the man is described as being the father of the people of Earth. And if we think about Prince Edaminion,
Oh,
he is
yeah.
Prince of Earth. So I think that is yet again another connection of those two characters being fairly similar. And then
Yeah,
obviously there's the
definitely.
Rose connection that connects us back to Rose Hall, connects us to Az. And then we continue with this theory that we do believe that it's Az that we're talking about when we talk about, you know, Darian, Prince of Earth, the man from Stonemother, and how this all interconnects together. Can you
Mhm.
see why my brain is overflowing with information at this point?
Totally.
Like, the amount of theories, like, seriously, Sarah J Maas, if this is your creation, like, what are you doing to us? Like, this is so complex. It's
I
amazing.
know, I know. It's
Absolutely
like these
amazing.
tiny little Easter eggs. I just really I feel, you know, listeners, like, you can buy Azriel and Bryce, you cannot, but, like, I'm all in. I feel very confident that this is where the story is going. Now, I don't think it will happen in a Crescent City or even potentially an ACOTAR book. Um, I think, and we've hinted about this, we've talked about it, but let's just finally, like, talk about it explicitly. You know, there's gonna be a 4th Crescent City book for sure. I think that book is gonna be mostly focused on, Rune and Lydia, Therian, you know, and maybe the connections between with the House of Many Waters. I don't know that we're gonna get a ton of Hunt and Bryce in that book. It may even be like a pivot similar to like Silver Flames. And I'm, you know, I want to get Az's reaction to having Bryce in ACOTAR. I don't know if we will, because I think she's gonna save her epic kind of intergalactic crossover for the Twilight of the Gods series.
I know.
Um, which is like exciting to think that it would be
I
like its
wanna
own
wait.
book series, but also sad because it's like who knows how long that's gonna be before we get to that.
I need something additional in the next book. I need at least some more clear hints, even if it's just so people don't hate Bryzriel so much, like that we can get it out there and be like, okay,
Yeah.
people don't hate Bryzriel. It's maybe gonna happen. Um, just I hate where we've been left. We've been left at such a horrible point. If she just pivots at this point and goes, right, let's do a whole book about Elaine and Lucian and not like talk about this whatsoever,
I know.
I will be quietly devastated. I need at least Az's perspective. I mean, I'm really hoping that the next ACOTAR book is going to be from Az's perspective and Nesta's perspective, maybe a bit of a lane, but I felt like how we finished House of Flame and Shadow, it suggested that it would be Az and
Yeah.
Nesta. But I definitely agree that I don't, as much as I want the love story to kick in next book, I especially also considering Sailor Moon, it's I think it's like 3 seasons before they actually start to really date. So if she's following that trajectory, it could be a while before they even end up together. Like it could be a very, very slow burn. We're just at the very beginning of this journey. So
Mhm.
we unfortunately may not see any results for quite some time, even if we are on the right idea that this is endgame. It could be a few books, but which is like I'm just going to be 60, guys, by the time this all comes through. I'm going to be here with my walking cane and my permed grey hair, like talking about how they're finally together.
Oh, you are not gonna be with a walking cane at 60. Girl, you can almost do 10,000 steps on the Stairmaster. I think you're gonna be kicking it well into your 60s.
Let's hope so. I just hope we get an
Yeah.
answer very soon, not too far away. She
Yeah,
has to give us
yeah, yeah,
something,
yeah.
at least a few more breadcrumbs in the next book so that we can handle waiting for the future ones.
Yeah, but I do think the Twilight of the Gods will be epic. If it's anything, because like, again, we're kind of basing a lot of this off of her Pinterest, but it was kind of referring to, like, Ragnarok, which is, you know, Viking, um, like, Norwegian gods. I think that is sort of like the end of the world, right? Midgard is also the name of a place that kind of like that
Yes.
world
And
ends in, like, some of those stories. So I could easily see, like, there is some kind of, like, end of the world event or
yeah.
something,
And
and
I
then
think
it kind of brings everyone together.
I love that you brought
Um
that up because that bonus chapter with Az and Bryce, and I spoke about the importance of that very last, the last page of that bonus chapter, and it's saying
Mhm.
no more Hunt, no more Midgard, and Bryce is alone. And I got this feeling that, like, what if Midgard's gonna freaking die, explode, whatever, and she has to escape, and then she's like completely broken, and that's where she heals herself with Az, which is what sort of that,
Mhm.
the summary of that last page kind of suggests. But it does point to that there's a chance that Midgard could cease to exist. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen too with the loss of the first light. Like, the
Mhm.
Asteri said that that was like they made it like a bomb. Like, they basically made it that if you tried to destroy it, it would blow up.
Yeah.
Hasn't
Well, and they
blown up
also said
yet,
they had a
but
kill switch, and we
yeah.
are assuming that, like, the kill switch was the bomb of the first light that Bryce kind of, like, put out into the black hole, but I don't know, there could be a separate kill switch, right, that, like, somehow gets triggered or something like that that we don't know about yet. So I do think that, like, I'm, like, convinced that, the next series from SJM is gonna be, like, a separate Twilight of the Gods series, and that's where we're gonna get our epic crossovers, and we will that's where we're gonna get Bryce and Azriel, but who's to
And that's where
say?
we're really gonna get the Sailor Moon as well, because I think we're gonna potentially see some of those characters all coming together, kind of like Marvel's like Endgame kind of, level where we're going to get all these characters from all the different books coming together. We can already see from the Pinterest that there's a potentially a Nesta. There's potential, obviously Bryce with the
There were
Starlight.
Valkyries on that
Yeah,
Pinterest,
and a
like, the
lot of
Valkyries
what
are gonna be important.
fandom are doing right now is they're looking at all the personalities of the different sailors, Sailor Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and going, right, which characters in these books would match this? Probably Lydia with the firepower would be another one that will
Mm.
potentially be part of it. And then whether there's anyone that's going to officially come from Throne of Glass World as well. So it's really,
Well,
even
and,
just
like,
from that perspective, it's so exciting.
yeah, Sailor Moon, it's like all these, like, badass, like, ladies with all this
Women.
awesome power who, kind of, like, I assume, I don't know for sure, but I assume they, like, kind of band together to, like,
Mhm.
defeat the evil villain, like,
Yeah.
that's what I wanna see. I wanna see Aelin and Feyre and Nessa and Bryce and Lydia and all of the people just, like, band together to
Yeah.
fight
Yeah.
whatever the big villain is. That
And
to me
when we
sounds so
get
exciting.
really frustrated right now that we didn't get this in Crescent City 3, we're like, why didn't we get that epic, like, multi-world fighting the Asteri? Because SJM is saving it. She's saving it for
She's saving
Twilight
it.
of the Gods. That's when we're
Yeah,
gonna see our best ones all come together to fight, all fight, and I think, and then potentially cue in also the major villains, which I believe is going to be the Princes of Hell. I think we've just gotten rid of one villain to open the doorway for another one that's
or
potentially
another one.
worse,
Yep,
potentially connected to the Valg, and now we're going to be dealing with the real villains that are going to be a whole lot worse than what we've been dealing with the Asteri so far.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes.
All right, any last thoughts on the Sailor Moon or Stone Mother theories or Orion? Did we cover it
I
all?
think I think we've pretty much covered it all. I think that's basically the general overviews. I think we've outlined how they're somewhat interconnected, how the characters, the similarities, and how they relate to Crescent City, to Az and to Bryce and the future. So I think that's all pretty covered. But of course, if I forget anything, we will definitely bring it to another episode. But hopefully, we've given you a good summary of that today.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to our part 2 on Bryce and Azriel and just kind of like what the future of the Massverse might look like. We hope that, this additional kind of extra stuff helped convince you. And if it didn't, we hope that it was just kind of fun to listen to. As always, please rate, review, subscribe. Feel free to give us a shout out on our Instagrams. Shoot us an email if you know more about Sailor Moon or Stone Mother or even Orion. I am sure there are many more experts out there than we are. So, you can always email us at romantasyreaders@gmail.com or you can DM us on Instagram. But thank you for listening. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.